PGCEtv.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PGCEtv with myself, Chris Griffiths, and James Griffiths. Hope you've all had a lovely Easter break and all recharged ready for the last couple of months of our course. Today's segment, we're going to be looking at the 10 critical standards and how we think you're going to meet them. On this segment, we're going to look at the first two. James is going to introduce them.
Yeah, so as Chris said, we're going to focus on the 10 critical standards, and today's focus is going to be P1, managing learning environment, and then later on we're going to be discussing P3, which is assessment.
So for this, all we're going to be doing is we're just going to give a little bit of our opinions, our thoughts, and sharing some best practice. None of this is concrete. We're not saying if you do any of this, you're definitely going to do it. This is just what we think, we believe from being on the front ground. And we're just trying to offer some advice and some help. So for P1, as James said, is managing the learning environment. We've put a descriptor there just to try and describe what it is. So the teacher understands the importance and demonstrates the effective establishment and ongoing management of the learning environment in promoting positive learning habits and behaviours that meet the four purposes and are understood by learners in that context. So this one is very much all about, as it says, that learning environment. Now, the first bit is going to be how can we meet capable? So the biggest things that we can kind of give advice on this one is evidence. Use that PLP, fill it with evidence. Some of it is going to be difficult to kind of evident because a lot of the learning environment is just reacting to the situation. So when you've got children that have been really good, it's rewarding and responding in that way. Or if you've got some with challenging behaviour, it's following the school's strategy.
So what I would suggest, my recommendation would be, is do research, write up your reflections on it, and then try and incorporate that into your lesson planning.
Our next little bit is kind of talking about our experiences of managing the learning environment so far. So personally, I believe it's probably one of the most important aspects of teaching. And I think out of all our standards, it's the pivotal one that if you haven't got it, the rest of them kind of crumble and you haven't got the opportunity to use the rest of them.
I think for every single child, a learning environment has to be a positive environment. You know, they go away with a positive experience, and it should never, ever, ever be negative.
In my experience, consistency and expectations are huge. If you go in without any expectations of how you want the children to behave or any of your rules or what they should expect from you as a teacher, we've got a few examples. Now, some of these we've seen, me and James have used. Some of them we've created, some of them we've seen in schools, some we've seen on Twitter. So these are all kind of just some examples of how we can create that learning environment and monitor it.
Down the bottom, you see music on YouTube, just calm, nice, gentle music. I'll play in the background. It'll help them relax, let them focus on the task that's at hand.
I've seen this on Twitter, so I'm not taking any credit for this, but it's a fantastic idea. But it's a reward card. So you can kind of reward the children for doing something and you scratch it off. We all have a scratch card. You've scratched it off, and behind there is a different reward. So that could be dojo points, that could be golden time. I made them around the four purposes, so you can give them out for when they've shown signs of following that, or being one of the, or following characteristics of one of the four purposes. So there's loads of things, and these are just a couple that we've seen, we've used that we think work. There's bound to be others out there, and if there is other ideas, please let us know because we want to try and share as much as we can. So there's a couple of things articles that we've looked at. Also, we've seen some other ones have been recommended on Twitter and all that stuff. So there's some things that you can have a look on, reflect on, and also get some ideas with. So if you're sat there thinking, oh, do you know what? I'm struggling with controlling that or managing that learning environment, but there's things I can do. There's a good few things on there.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like the book there, Learn to Teach in Primary School, I purchased that prior to this course. And I tell you what, that book has helped me unbelievably. Like the things I hadn't even thought about came out from this book. So I would recommend highly purchasing this book, reading it, and using this in your teaching plans. Because honestly, it's helped me no end. So now we're going to talk about P3, which is assessment. And the descriptor for this is: the range of purposes and practices for assessment is understood and articulated. Now, me and Chris, we both spoke about this one in great depth earlier on today. And at first we're thinking, well, how can we evidence this? It doesn't always have to be like screenshots of your work. It can be in picture form. It could be people voice. If you've got footage, You can use that as evidence. Of course, you need to get the appropriate forms in place to allow you to do so. Marking. You use the school's marking criteria to mark the books. You can use quizzes. Always, always, always produce the evidence and incorporate them into your lesson planning.
I took it for granted really, but that assessment column on your lesson planning and in your lesson plan itself, it's really key that if you're going to do any form of assessment, whether that's AFL, marking, or any other types, it's really key. I think you hammer home in there. Again, like I said, we were talking earlier, and I've always fallen under the kind of the perception that assessment was just based around assessment for learning, but yeah, having the exposure and doing a little bit of research and talking to mentors and university lecturers and stuff, it opens up so much more than that. So yeah, as you said, it's stuff like using quizzes, you've got marking, you've got AFL, but also you've got the 3 different assessment stages. So you've got the pre-assessment, so where you kind of find out where the children are about the topic you're about to teach into. So that's like stuff like group discussions, just to find out their knowledge, a little bit of feedback from them. You've got formative assessments when they're kind of in the middle of doing work and you're just checking that it's all going right. So, for example, a quiz, using that just to check that the knowledge and what they're trying to learn and teach is right, because then you can change the second half of the lesson or the follow-on lesson to suit. But then you've also got the summative assessment, so evidencing how they've learned the whole topic. So at the end, you've got quizzes, you've got writing something that must include X, Y, and Z. All these are things that I've kind of opened my eyes to and thought, oh, do you know what? I can evidence that. I can use that, and it's really showing that I understand assessment. Because yeah, it's not just AFL, which is what I'll hold my hands up. I admittedly thought it just was.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we first started the course, I wasn't always including them in my lesson plans. It's like, what I'm doing? That's easy marks there. You know,
Yeah.
add in a couple of strategies into your lesson plans, and you can easily hit those capable markers. Yeah, so our experiences of assessment really is assessment for learning. When I was with my reception class last term, I was running a PE lesson, and I thought it'd be a really good idea to discuss our body temperatures pre-physical ed and post-physical ed. So what I got was I printed out 3 emoji faces. One was showing that they're really cold, the one was warm, and the final one was a really hot, warm face. And I got them to stand up and stand next to that emoji, which they felt. So they had a PE lesson, they're running around, loving it. And then the final thing we did again was stand next to the emoji. Do you feel cold, warm, or hot? And I would say 95% of them all stood next to hot. And for me, that was really, really good AFL, because it shows me that they've understood and they've learned that they were not so warm earlier, but now after running around, they are feeling really, really hot.
And the good thing about AFL is there's so many different types of strategies, and there's some on the slide in a couple of slides time. But there's so many different strategies you can use. After our SLT day where we looked at it, I made one for my last placement with year 6, and it had the learning objective or learning intention. It had the success criteria which they could mark themselves, or they'd have their friend mark it, and then I'd mark it as well. So you could have a mixture of either of self, peer, and teacher, or just one of them, however you wanted to do it. And then they had the opportunity then to kind of think about their work and think and give 2 stars and a wish. It's kind of that the more you do it, the more you get experience with it. It's practice makes perfect type thing. But
yeah, of course. And I think as well, like when they've done the work as well, something I've noticed my class mentor now, what she does, as well as mark the books, she actually sends them back to do another challenge as well. So the learning is progressing as well. So it could be something like, you know, capital letters or include tricky words. So yeah, I thought that was a really, really clever way of assessing and challenging them.
But I mentioned earlier about the 3 assessment stages.
Yeah.
So kind of my evidence and stuff I use for that. So for the pre-assessment stage, I had the turn and talk tactic, where the children literally, we've got a topic, this is what we're going to be learning about, the children will turn and talk to their friend about what they know, and then they'll feed back to the class. And what that allowed me to do then is say, okay, so the majority of children knew this, some knew that, this is what we're going to move forward with. So we then got formative assessment, which was a Google quiz. So I used a Google quiz on planets. So the children had to do a fact file on a planet of their choice or the solar system. There was quite a bit of free roam with it. And then halfway through the lesson, we did a quick pop quiz where they had to answer questions around different planets in the solar system. And then the summative assessment, so the one right at the end, was literally, we did 3 or 4 lessons on instructive writing and the features of instructive writing. And then right at the end, then all I had them do is they had to choose, by differentiation, they had to choose from 3 different instructions. So they could either choose to write instructions for baking a cake, walking to school, or the third one escapes me. But again, it got harder. And then they had to write their own set of instructions for that. And then I just had marking criteria at the end, and I could say tick, tick, yes, they did it, or no, or no, they didn't. So by the end, we've looked at this topic for a couple of weeks, and I can see which children have learned what. And again, you can put more in, you can plan them moving forward. So that was quite handy. But I didn't really incorporate the 3 assessment stages. Or I did it without realizing it. It's only because of doing research pre-January and the assignment and stuff like that, where it's actually thinking, oh, actually, you know what, I've done that.
Yeah, and you can apply it in your lesson plans, absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm now finding it where I'm hammering it in my lesson plan, as you just said, and it's there, it's evidence. And I'd never thought of doing it, but because like I said, I just thought it was AFL. That's all I thought assessment was.
And of course,
I put my hands up to that.
Yeah, but then that's you've reflected on experience and you've reflected on your teaching practices, and you've looked at the research you've done, and you've just combined them together to improve your teaching practice yourself. Yeah. So yeah, we've got examples here, and of course we've alluded to some of these already. Like the emoji faces there is what I touched upon on the last slide, and of course I mentioned 2 stars and a wish as well, and the peer self reflection assessment piece as well.
Yes, that was the one I created for my school, the one I just mentioned. So that's how it looks. So they just had a copy of that, they filled it out and stuck it in their book.
Absolutely. No, that's a great idea as well. And of course, especially with foundation phase as well, it's quite difficult for them to do that sort of thing. So it's a simple thumbs up to show their understanding, or their traffic light system. You know, red can be like, sir, I don't understand what I need to do, or amber, I kind of get it, but I need a bit more assistance. And green could be like, oh, I understand it, I can crack on the work, thank you, sir. But we did a segment a few months ago with 3D printing, and we discussed creating a jigsaw, didn't we? And I think you're potentially going to be pursuing that in this next placement.
Yeah, so and one of my examples, because I'm working with reception class, so what I was looking to do is doing a phonics jigsaw. So obviously the words, the blend in the words and phonics, and basically what they'd be jigsaw pieces, splitting the words in half. And this is kind of the summative assessment. This is so I know the children know how to read the words, because they just go, they look at the puzzle pieces and they put the word together. And if I know that if I can see they put the word together, I know that they can read it, they can blend it.
It's fun as well. They're learning through play.
Yeah.
For that age group is a massive tick in the box.
Exactly. And like we've put some ideas there, and obviously we've said some ideas earlier, but this is only the tip of the iceberg. There's been so many things on Twitter I've seen. And it really is. And if anyone that is watching this isn't on Twitter, I highly recommend getting on Twitter just to see all the different resources that people come up with. And they're so genius. You think, how have they come up with that?
And of course, now what we're doing here are some articles for you to look into if you'd like to. Again, you can use these, and if they are beneficial for you, they're brilliant. These have certainly helped us anyway. Yeah. So please feel free to research these and incorporate them into your lesson planning.
Now, that is it for today's focus of P1 and P3. A couple of weeks ago, almost a month ago now, look at the date there.
Wow.
We ran, I can't believe it was that long ago. We ran a Twitter poll to kind of find out which professional standards or critical standards you guys want support with more than others. So as you can see by the Twitter poll, C2 and I2, so collaboration and innovation, are going to be the topic of our next PGC segment.
Yeah.
So keep your eyes peeled for that. if in the meantime you do have any questions or you do have any ideas or you want to share some best practice, we are on Twitter, as we've said. So give us a follow. And like I said, there's so much best practice on there, and we'll be putting some other things on there about PGCEtv as well. So make sure you get involved, follow us, and like I said, if there's anything you don't agree with as well,
yeah,
challenge us. Yeah,
Absolutely.
get involved. Let us know. Yeah, definitely. So that's it for us for now. Like I said, if you have any questions, just let us know. But apart from that, we look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Hwyl fawr.
Hwyl fawr.